Welcome back, CSC230, Web Development, to Exercise 15. This is part 2 of our random seasons, and it's just a continuation of our seasons where we use buttons, except now we're going to generate random seasons or generate a random picture of the seasons with a button. Not that that's really that relevant, but we're just going to review how to do that. So if you ever wanted to have a banner or a heading on a page that would change randomly, you can do that. We'll do it first with a button, and then we'll do it after a certain amount of seconds passes. So what we did in part 1 is we got everything set up and we made a list here. And now what we're going to do is we're going to generate a random number. Now, to generate a random number, I'll go to W3 Schools and I'll look for, let's see, we're in arrays right now. There's JS_random. And random is actually a method of the math object. Now, we didn't talk about object-oriented programming, but we'll specify math first, and then we'll use a dot, and then we'll have the random method. Now, we can't use just a random method because if you try it yourself here, or even read this, it says returns a number lower than 1. So it's always lower than 1. Now, how good is that if you want a number from 0 to 3? So if you try it here, it's always going to generate a number from 0 to like 0.9999. If you keep running it here, you can see it's generating numbers from 0.9999. Now, instead of doing this in our code, I could do it right here. What we're basically going to do is take this number and multiply it by 4. And let's just do that. And now it's going to do a number from 0 to less than 4. Except what we're going to do is round it down. Because right now it's going from anywhere from 0.1 up to still less than, it's never going to 4. You see we had one at 3.98. It's never going down below that. So we just went from 0 to 4. So this gets us so we have kind of a number above 1, except we want to round it down. So what we actually do, if we go over here to random, you can see they use something called math floor. And you can wrap math floor around the whole thing, or you could do it afterwards. And we're going to do a couple things. We'll do it afterwards. Now, there's floor and there's ceil. Floor basically rounds it down to an integer, so it'll take off the decimal. So if we were working on this and we basically round it off, all of these ones that have 0 would be a 0. And this would be rounded down to 3. And that would be the highest number there would be. And this would be rounded down to 1. And this would be rounded down to 3. And that would be rounded down to 2. So that's really what we're going to do. We're going to take Math.random, multiply it by 4, and then actually use the floor method and round it down again, if that makes any sense. So let's go and do that. We're going to do that after here. And we could kind of start the function too if we want to. We can put function, and we'll just call it change season. And we'll use camel case with a capital S here, and we'll put our parentheses, and we'll put our opening, closing curly braces. And what's going to happen in here is we'll have a variable that represents a random number. Now, up here, I told you we used const, meaning it doesn't change. We're not going to do that again because our variable is going to change. So we're going to do something called let. And if you try to use const, it won't work, because I tried using const and I got an error. So we're going to use let. Now, if you did var, it would be fine too, but we're going to say let. And I like to do rn because that's just, stands for random number. Let rn equal, and we're going to do math.random. And remember, math, the object, has a capital M, and then random, the method, has a small r. Here we go. Capital M, small r. And then there's a parentheses. And you don't put anything in that particular parentheses. So we'll do that, and then we'll just multiply it by 4. Now, there's different ways you could do this, but I'll put a semicolon here. Then I'm going to reassign rn. Now, that's why we have to use let, because we're reassigning rn. So then we're saying rn now is going to equal math.floor. Here's another method of the math object. And this one, we will put something in the parentheses. We're going to put rn in there. So we're going to basically, whatever rn is, we're going to round it down. So floor just means we're going to round it down and take away the decimal from the integer. So whatever it was here, whatever this one was, then here is basically going to be rounded down. And that should take us down from 0 to 3. That should generate, and I'll put a comment here, 2 slashes in JavaScript will do that. Generates 0 through 3 random number. Now, what are we going to do with that random number? Well, remember how we had seasons 0, seasons 1, seasons 2. Seasons 2 was fall, where instead of 2, we're going to use the random number because that'll be any number that comes up. And basically what we could do is copy one of these here. We can copy this document, get element by ID, pick, inner HTML. We could copy that and put this right after and have it document.getElementById ID pick inner HTML. And inner HTML now is going to be just like we did before. It's going to be seasons, and instead of being 0 or 1 or 2 or 3, it's going to be random number. It'll be any one of those four numbers. 0 through 3 is 4 numbers, so it'll be any one of those. So it'll just come up each time, and that's why we're declaring this in here. You can declare a random number variable outside of the function, but we're going to declare a new one every time we run the function. That's the idea of it, because if we declared it outside of there and then we had a button that ran the function, it would just run the same picture every time. But now it's going to generate a new random number, and then when we run the function or call the function, it's going to make a new image. Now, how do we make the image run? Well, or get called. We could copy one of these and we could call button2. You remember we called it button2? That's the ID name, button2. So go back here. Remember, there it is. The ID is button2. So we're calling the ID name because we're using getElementById. It's button2. We're using the addEventListener method, and it's going to happen on a click. And what function is going to happen? Not change we. It's going to be change seasons or season. Be very careful about that. It's season. It's not change seasons. So you don't put the parentheses, the double parentheses here. You just finish off the parentheses for this addEventListener. So that should basically make it so that when we click on the button, it'll run this function. It'll generate a random number and it'll generate a random image. So let's check that out. We can hit run here, and then we could go up here and refresh it, and hopefully Spring will come back. And then when we hit this button, it should generate a random image. Oh, there's winter, and I could tell it's random because winter isn't first in the list. And if you do it another time, it may come up again because it may run the same number again. Now there's summer. Now there's fall. Now there's fall. Now there's fall. Now there's summer. Now there's fall. Now there's summer. Now there's spring, and so on. So, with 4 random numbers, there's not a whole lot of things that can happen. But if you had different, homepage images or anything like that you wanted to put on there, you could always do that. Now, this is happening with a button. Now, let me just point out that not only can you have it happen with a button, but I'll just highlight this and I'll comment it. I'll do command /. Or you could just do 2 slashes in front of it. If I undid that, I could have just gone here and put // and that will comment that out. Now you could run the function. You could just call the function change season and just call it. And what that means is it'll just call it when the page loads. So if I refresh the page, it'll be a new one every time I refresh the page. You see what's happening here? Every time I refresh the page, it's a new one. So that's one way to have a new image every time you refresh the page, is just run the function with a random image. Now that's not like a slideshow or anything, that's just putting a random image on there, and that keeps the page looking fresh, I guess, so you could do that. Now something else you could do, I'll get rid of this, and I'll get rid of the comment here. Something else you can also do is you could just use something called setInterval. Now if you go here, I'll just look up W3 Schools setInterval. There it is. Now the way this works, it's pretty easy, is the setInterval method calls a function at specified intervals in milliseconds. And basically you put the function and then you put the number of milliseconds, which basically means whatever seconds it is times 1,000. And there's other parameters there, but we could just do these. So just 2 things that are here. Let's see if we have another example. There it is. setInterval, my timer is the function. Notice no parentheses in there. And then that would be every second. So let's set up the page so it basically runs one each second. So, or each 5 seconds, something like that. So right now, this is the one we just did, that happens with a button, but we can set up something where we run that same function, except we run it with a set interval. And I believe we can just do set interval, and we can put change season, comma, and we'll put like 5,000. Or let's do 3. Let's do it every 3 seconds. And that would be 3 seconds. So let's see how that works. So let me see how this works. So I'll just hit run and I'll refresh it, and it should just start doing it every 3 seconds. There it goes. There's fall. There's spring. There's fall. There's winter. You get the idea. So that's working. So that's all you have to do is just do set interval, put the function that you already created. Now this way it's being generated by the click event. In this statement it's being generated by the click event, and it's using the add event listener, and it's calling the button. And here we're just using the set interval method that's basically calling the function every 3 seconds. So we have everything going on here. I'm not saying it looks perfect or it's the way you'd want to set up a page. I'm just showing you the different things we could do here. So if you just put the function alone and you didn't have set interval, it would change every time you refresh the page. And this way it has a button. And I'm not saying, again, you should have a button, but I wanted to show how to do it with a button. So that's about it. That's all we have to do with this. I guess we didn't really have to copy the whole folder just to do this because we kind of added on to it, but there it is, it's working. So these things are working right now, and that's all you have to do for EX15. Again, just copy your link up here, copy your Replit link, and put it in for EX15. I'll have that in, I believe, Unit 14. So I'll have it in Unit 14. So we don't have that much to do anymore, so we probably have one exercise after this that'll fit in, but this is exercise 15, kind of a little add-on to exercise 14, continuing with JavaScript and working with random numbers here, also generating random images.